Welcome to New Earth Lifestyles. I'm Janie King, producer and creator of New Earth Lifestyles. Thank you for joining us today, September 18th, 2014. We're in downtown Manchester, New Hampshire, a beautiful sunny day, sunny fall day, heading toward the first day of fall coming up this weekend. Seasons will be changing, and we will be coming into a moment of balance when fall equinox occurs this weekend. And equinox is a time of balance because we will have equal day light with equal evening darkness, and that's what the equinox means, is a balance. So, welcome and thanks for joining us today. Jane E. King, New Earth Lifestyles. This show is an opportunity for you, the viewer, to see and experience different ways of being, different ways of living, different people that you won't normally see in your everyday life as you connect in with what is so-called normal, which, as I've said before on the show, what is normal? Is there a normal? I don't think there's a normal because I'm not normal. Having fun, enjoying life is what life is all about, as long as you're not hurting anyone else. And today, I have a special guest to have you meet today, Wendy Gilker. Wendy is from New London, New Hampshire. Welcome, Wendy.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Glad you're here. Wendy is the mother of Bree, who is a profoundly handicapped young lady. And Wendy has been a very dedicated mother all of her life, caring for Bree for 34 and a half years. And she came here today because she wanted to give you, the viewer, an opportunity to see and to experience what her life has been like, and perhaps talk about some of the programs that she's hoping will continue that have been helping her continue to feed Bree and help Bree to be mobile. And we'll talk about Bree's disability or her handicap in a minute too. So, Wendy, I've known you for a few years now, probably 15 or so now, I think.
So, yeah.
Pretty long time. When I met you, you're actually living in Sutton now. I made that mistake.
Yes, but I lived in New London for 20 years. I rented a place on Main Street, New London, for 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the community there has seen Bree and I. Usually I would be out walking her, but they've never seen what our daily life is like.
Right.
You know.
And Bree was born in...
She was born in 1980, April 2nd, 1980. I had a normal pregnancy, and but she was 2 weeks late.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was born, so I was expecting a normal pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I had trained for, to have a normal delivery, no medication, nothing, just with the midwife.
Mm-hmm.
And but one night I started bleeding, and the nurse said to get to the hospital immediately. And then I spent a day being induced, and I was in a small country hospital, so they didn't have the ultrasound at that point in time.
Right.
So, but there was, I had a normal pregnancy, so there was no reason, to suspect anything.
Mm-hmm. And this was in where?
This was in St. Agathe in Canada, north of Montreal, about an hour north of Montreal.
I see.
And so finally, the nurse called the doctor in, and it's an evening now, and every time I stood up I would bleed, and so she called the doctor back in, and they gave me the choice of either having a C-section immediately, and they could guarantee the life of my daughter and myself, or if not, being sent to the city the next morning where they couldn't guarantee my daughter's life. So of course there was no decision to be made. Then they did the C-section. When I came to, everybody was acting strangely. I couldn't get straight answers from anybody. And
about what?
About where my daughter was.
I see.
And they kept saying something was wrong. Something was wrong with her eyes. Something was wrong. So then I'm going to make this short. Then they had to send her to the city, they said. And I didn't have anybody around me with the cognizance to put me in the ambulance with her or send me, keep us together.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't have anybody. So basically we were separated for the first 8 days. And I didn't get a diagnosis until 2 months later that Bree had, at that time in 1980, a rare chromosome deletion, which was called either wolf-hirschhorn syndrome or 4P-, which is the easiest way. It means that the small arm, or the petit arm, of the fourth chromosome is missing. And the level of what's missing indicates how profound the handicap will be. So it was very little recognized up to that point even. Mm-hmm. So they really didn't have any solutions for me, except the diagnosis was Bree would be lucky to live to 5. She would never recognize anybody. She'd never interact with anybody. She'd never move. She'd never talk. She would have seizures that even with medication would take over her life. And I have been in hospitals during those early years where I've seen people like that in rooms alone.
Mm. Young babies, you mean?
Yes, and then even like teenagers who are just, yeah. When you spend those first years, I spent a lot of time in the hospital because I'd always stay with Bree. So at night I'd be walking the halls, you know. You get to see a lot.
Right.
So I took Bree home at that point, and I was, you know, devastated. You know, this is my child.
Your first and only child.
Yes, and also both her dad and I were genetically tested. It wasn't genetics. There was nothing in the family. So, you know, I'm now in a world that I know nothing about.
Right.
And except that I wanted to keep my daughter alive.
That's it, yeah. Keep Bree alive.
Yeah.
That's been your goal all of her life from the beginning.
Well, at the beginning, I had a 5-year span of time.
Right.
You know, in my mind,
it
was like, I've got 5 years to figure this out, to find some way to keep her alive. And the medical, fortunately now, the medical profession didn't have any answers for me, because that forced me to go into avenues that I don't know if I would have approached otherwise.
Right.
You know, and so so I started reading. I love to read. I'm an avid reader. I'm an avid researcher. So that was on my side. And I just started reading and reading and reading and borrowing books from the Handicapped Society, and just kept feeding her the best I knew and loving her. And then I found out about the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential, which is out of Philadelphia. And they work with NASA, and they work with early learning. What they learn with early learning on children, they use on the handicapped children, and vice versa. So they literally, I read Glenn Doman, I read his book, What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child. Like, for me at that time, oh my God, there's a book called What to Do About Your Brain Injured Child. So
yeah.
I'm devouring the information, and there was a 2-year waiting list. Bree is now 3, 4. There's a 2-year waiting list. She's not moving. She's not doing anything really. I mean, I'm feeding her.
So when you found this book, she was 2 or 3 years old.
Yes.
Now,
So,
but you mean...
and she was seizing now. She was having seizures. She was having grand mal seizures. She would get pneumonia. She was get sick a lot. So I wrote and found out, phoned, set up an appointment. I had no idea how I was going to pay for it, anything. I was driven to keep my daughter alive.
You know? Driven to keep your daughter alive.
That was it.
Because you loved her.
Of course. She's part of me.
She's part of you.
Yeah. So, so we got an appointment for 2 years, but I said, you know, put us on a cancellation waiting list. I want to be there, you know. I remember the day they called me. It was June, about a year before our appointment, and they said, we have a cancellation for next month. And the funny thing was, her dad answered the phone, and he said, well, we'll see. And when he got off the phone and told me what it was, I said, we'll see. No. I phoned the back, and I said, if I have to crawl, I'm getting there. I had no idea how, but I'll get there. And I read the books, I started doing the stimulation. They teach early reading by writing big words like red on white, because the bigger it is, the more kids learn first with big words. They'll read signs along the roads because they're big. You know? And so I started doing all that ahead of time, and I did the stimulation program. Bree was not moving, not sitting up when I started. And I did it for 2.5 years. And I would have continued, but financially, and I didn't have anybody supporting me. I mean...
So your husband was not supportive?
He was there, but he didn't support continuing the program.
I see.
You know, and actually at one point he said he'd leave if I continued the program and he was in the house. He didn't want to see it going on.
Oh.
So that was hard.
That was difficult.
That was difficult.
You were driven to keep your daughter alive, and he was turning around and
he just
not wanting to.
Because she didn't get totally well in 2 years.
Right.
He couldn't accept it for whatever reason. I mean, it's hard for me to understand because this is his daughter. This is part of him too. But I can't. You know, I was just driven. I would have done. You know, tried to move mountains. You know.
Right.
And so. So I did the best I could, but for 2 years I literally lived with a stopwatch. Unfortunately, we haven't got the facility to show these, but it does show. I have documented when she was 3, 7, and 11. I made books for her. We showed her thousands of pictures with data behind it. We did something called patterning, where we literally taught her brain how to move in a cross-pattern fashion. All these things from the institutes that we went there every 3 months and spent a week in lectures. We were trained to do this. You don't just do this. Walter, my husband at that time,
he went with you
yes,
in the beginning. Yes,
he did. Through the 2 years he was there.
I see. So those are the 2 years that he couldn't do it anymore.
After the 2 years, and she didn't get totally well.
She didn't get totally well in 2 years, so he couldn't handle it.
Yes. So he backed away. He was there, but he was emotionally, not
able to do it.
I'm not going to.
Right.
That's his journey.
That's his journey. So these DVDs that you have, that's too bad. They're pretty long.
They're pretty long.
But they document all that you went through at that
They document
institute.
the whole, yes, they really document a lot of the stimulation program. It's amazing. I would highly recommend it to anybody because they literally teach you how to retrain your child's brain. Excuse me, I'm just going to take some water. By the time Bree was 11, I had her walking with aid at that point.
That's what's amazing. You had her walking
with aid. And feeding herself. Because now she's not able to walk, and you need to feed her. And I feed her. And to supervise feeding her, it would take about 45 minutes each meal. And right now she's eating 5 times a day.
5 times a day?
Yeah. She has a breakfast, then she has a mid-morning green smoothie, then she has a miso soup for lunch, then she has a mid-afternoon green smoothie. Because she's very lean. And so she eats it all. I don't give her anything she doesn't want, you know.
So Bree is now 34 and a half years old, and you've been doing this regimen with her all of her life.
We still creep her every day. We also rebound her every day.
What does rebounding mean?
Trampolining.
Trampoline.
Yeah,
the little trampoline, that's right.
Yeah, because it cleans the lymph system. Right. So if she's ever feeling off, we put her on the trampoline, she feels better. So, it's doing something.
Right. It's moving the lymph, and the lymph is a cleansing part of our system anyway.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, it's like the sewer system of the human body. I know that's, but
yeah, it's kind of a weird way to look at it. But let's take a breath on that.
Yes. Okay.
The lymph, cleaning the lymph, because that's important for all of us, even normal, healthy people that are cleaning the lymph. And I had a rebounder, one little trampoline once, but I couldn't find the time to do it. But it is really important because it gets the lymph nodes all stimulated, and lymph is fluid. And it goes everywhere in our body, and moving it is...
it's important.
It's important because a lot of the gunk and stuff that releases from our body gets flushed into the lymph system to be released.
And stagnates if it doesn't get released. It doesn't get moved.
Right. And so Bree is 34 and a half years old now. So I have some pictures here
She
Bree.
looks younger than 34.
And how old is she in this picture here?
She's that was about 3 years ago.
Oops.
These pictures were about 3 years ago.
Actually,
Yeah.
I'm going to take it out of this because it's
It's shiny.
shiny, hard to.
All right.
So Bree is
Bree is a joy.
an amazing being.
Yes.
So this is Bree. A couple years ago,
Here's another one.
there's another picture of Bree. And I know I've worked with Bree for a couple years, or for a year or so, when I worked with the school
so
system.
long ago. Yeah.
And she is actually, she is a joy to work with, and she is so much beautiful, compassionate, loving energy. And here's another photograph here. How old is she in this picture?
Same. She was about 32, 31,
here.
32. Yeah.
So even that one's kind of shiny too. So
I don't know about this. This is one of my favorite ones. I don't know if that's going to be shiny. That's
Okay.
Bree and I.
That's you
She
and Bree.
creeped over to me and got up, and I don't know who was there catching it, but it's one of my favorites.
It was in your house.
At night.
So she's a very loving being, a very
she's-
loving child.
At night, I have these pillows that she leans over to support her here because she's got quite a severe curvature, and but it doesn't impact her in any way. She still creeps. She doesn't get normally with something like that. You get a lot of upper respiratory, but because of her diet, she's not.
We'd like to talk about that.
Yes, we will. Yes, and so at night, one of my how she touches me deeply is we'll be watching TV before bed, and I'll be leaning on the pillows with her, and she'll reach over and pat my head,
Oh.
like you did good, Mom, you know, and that
kind of does it for you.
She
then.
gets me. She's gotten me right there.
She gets you.
So,
So the diet.
the diet.
Yeah.
So around 2, 3, we found the stimulation program because the two big things that I have found, this is just in my experience with Bree, that have made the biggest difference was the stimulation program and the macrobiotic diet. So we were going to Philadelphia, and what got me on the diet was the seizures, the grand mal seizures. Bree would have like at least 6 grand mal seizures of 4-hour durations a year, and she'd have 400 petit mals a day. So these were taking over everything almost, you know.
Yeah, because you can't.
Because we're always dealing with those.
Yeah. What happens when they have a seizure like that? When a person.
Well,
does that?
normally you get them to the hospital and they medicate and to bring her out. I mean, I have one of the hardest days of my life was I brought her out alone of a 4-hour seizure.
Wow.
I was compressing the back of her head with cold water, compressing her forehead. There was this mask that we had at Philadelphia which forces the breathing. I was doing that a minute on, a minute off, massaging her feet, pulling the energy off her toes. It took 4 hours, but I brought her out.
Pulling the energy off her toes.
Yeah, off her big toes. It's acupuncture stuff.
Acupuncture,
Yes,
an
yeah.
acupuncture technique.
Yeah.
So if anyone out there has a child that is severely handicapped, these are some techniques
I would
be
do the cold
important.
compressing. You put a bowl with ice in it, and you have your face cloths, and you cold compress because the brain cells have expanded, so you're trying to contract them.
I see.
You
That's
know.
what causes the seizure.
Yeah,
The brain
well-
cells have expanded.
Bree, it was allergies. That's what I found out. That's what's really important, which I'll get to. I found out that I should have brought the book with me. Her seizures, as I learned more about diet, I picked up this one book at that point, which was printed, I think, in 1984. And it was the first book I found that directly said, these foods we have found with people who are sensitive will create epilepsy and seizure activity.
Really? Foods will cause
Yes.
that?
Yes.
So it wasn't so much to do with her disability or handicap.
Interesting, because within 2 years of doing the macrobiotic diet, her grand mal seizures stopped.
Wow.
They were never supposed to stop, ever, even with drugs.
Wow.
So that got my attention.
And so tell me about the macrobiotic diet. What does
Well,
that mean?
Macrobiotics means long life or great life.
Okay.
And basically it's mainly a plant-based diet.
Okay.
And an example would be breakfast would be a grain like millet or quinoa or rice cooked with vegetables. and steamed greens, and then lunch would be a miso soup, and then supper is a complete meal of a sea vegetable dish. We eat sea vegetables. A protein dish would be a bean, a grain, and either a slow or long cooking vegetable. Now, in the last 6 years, I've added more raw foods because a lot of brain injured kids are a big issue, not only seizures, but constipation. And it's really interesting that the intestines look very similar to the brain.
That is interesting.
Okay.
Wow, it's like an expanded
yes.
brain.
Yes.
And the way they all twist around in the stomach, and what's that, 20 miles of intestines?
Yes.
And I think they said there's 100,000 miles of brain.
So,
something.
You know, here are two things that my experience, profoundly handicapped people experience, is constipation and seizures, and they're very similar in appearance.
Right.
So I have added, Bree was constipated for 31 years. I mean, no one else, another thing is no one else ever gave her a bath but me for the first 31 years, and then I broke an arm.
Wow.
You know, so that was always hard, you know. I started feeding her more raw because I started learning about raw foods and green smoothies. And she now has normal bowel movements.
Wow, congratulations.
Yes.
From getting
And
from
adding
the green smoothies.
Yes, you know, tweaking the diet
Right.
to her. I mean,
And what's in the green smoothie?
Bree's green smoothie is 2 cups of water with 4 pears, organic, everything's organic, 4 pears, a small piece of ginger, you know, with the skin off of it, some flaxseed. Flaxseed always has to be ground or it goes right through you.
Okay.
And then I put in, today when I made it, I put in lacinato kale, I put in some bok choy, collard greens. Those were the greens today.
Yeah.
But Bree's allergic to citrus fruits, so really the safest fruit for her, she's even allergic to apples, so pears, pears work for her.
And so you found this out by
Trial and error. And the only way you really find out about allergies is you can test all you want. It's elimination. Anybody will tell you that. You have to eliminate the foods
from your diet,
Yeah.
and then see how you are after that.
An example of how I found out she was allergic to wheat and corn was that in the macrobiotic diet during the summer, cream corn, we make it from scratch, is considered cooling. And udon noodles, which were wheat, that's another cooling type of food to have. So in the summer, I gave her more of that. And I didn't make the connection at the beginning, but her seizures would increase. So I kept studying and researching and reading books about diet. And then I saw, wow, corn and wheat are big allergens. Dairy, corn, wheat, soy, those are all big allergens.
Now, does that have something to do with how they're grown?
I don't know. Geez.
Well, they're grown in pretty big places out in the Midwest, even if they're so-called organic.
Yeah, I think the wheat might have gotten, because I give her now a rice noodle, 100% rice noodle that works fine.
Right.
And she has no problem with other
As
grains.
soon as you said that,
but
I had
wheat,
this visual of pesticides or something being on them, that it's not the actual wheat or corn, but it's
well,
something
wheat
that
is
was
also in so much of our food. I mean,
is.
if you read packaged ingredients, there's wheat in there somewhere.
Or soy.
And it's used as a thickener.
Right.
So
and soy is you really can't get organic soy in this country any longer.
To find GMO free, you have to be very. I know in White River Junction, the Upper Valley Food Co-op is very conscious of being GMO free with any of the project as best they can.
Right.
You know, in their store, and that's where I shop.
That's a good store. I know I've shopped in that store too. I know it's a ways from Manchester, but
still,
Junction,
they really focus on being GMO free as they are cognizant. You know.
And that is an allergen, being a GMO product, genetically modified organism.
You don't.
We don't know how, the body doesn't know what that is.
No.
It's genetically modified so that when you put it into your digestive system in your stomach, and your body says, okay, what's this? Because it's been modified to a place where the cells have a memory, cannot recognize it. That's what an allergy is.
And
basically.
that's like the oils that we put in.
Oils in what?
Certain cooking oils do
yeah.
the same thing to your body. They don't have the right molecules, so the body really rejects it.
Like corn oil
yeah.
or vegetable oil, so-called, because it's got all kinds of other oils added to it.
Yeah.
That who knows what kind of
exactly.
changes they've made to the molecules. And so the body can't recognize it, and so that could be part of what the allergy is for the.
And even though, it can be an allergy reaction, or it can just drain your body. I mean, I think most people have a reaction to wheat, but they don't recognize it because it makes them more sleepy, so they haven't paid attention, or it might make them stuffed up, or so they just think, oh, I'm stuffed up.
Right.
But actually, they're allergic to something.
And that's true. And I've started back into eating homemade or handmade breads, artisan breads, and then I realized that my sinuses are stuffed up. I'm sneezing more, and so I love bread too. So I have to back off the wheat, and I also am looking at rice noodles instead of the wheat.
There's a great
all spaghetti. Everything spaghetti is wheat, and it's
I think it's
causes allergens.
There's a great rice noodle. Tignata noodles, if I'm pronouncing it properly. They're even a wheat-free factory, so any of their noodles are fabulous.
And that's another key to look at is knowing the origins of your food and what kind of a environment the food is created in or manufactured in or whatever.
Yeah. And for me, recognizing the allergies causing the seizures, and and there's also environmental things that she's dealing with too, because we live in this world of all kinds of stuff coming at us.
Right.
But she doesn't have grand mal seizures anymore, and any little petit mals that she has where she just falls over do not require intervention in any way.
Well, congratulations! That is a huge accomplishment.
Those things were big for me.
No grand mal seizures, and how long has that been?
Oh, well, that's been since 2 years into macrobiotics, and we started it when she was 4.5.
Oh, so since she was 6ish or 7ish, she's had no grand mal seizures. Yeah. Wow!
But she's had little petit mals, but nothing.
So you have become an authority on caring for your
just by caring
profoundly handicapped daughter
by doing it every day for
34 years, and continually researching and looking for alternatives, or researching and trial and error.
And I am certified by the institutes to work with brain injury. In that sense, I mean, they train us to work with our own children.
Right.
In macrobiotics, I got certified at the senior level. In macrobiotics.
So what would you call that? You're certified in what?
As I could, I can teach macrobiotics to, I can teach cooking classes. Yes, yeah. I'm from the Cushy Institute. So.
The originators of macrobiotics.
I took this stuff I learned and I became qualified in it. Probably my expertise is in healing level foods, because that's what I've been doing with Bree all these years, which is very simple foods but very clean. And
what do you mean by clean?
Well, clean is, would be like millet cooked with winter squash, celery, and onion, and some aduki beans cooked with,
But
very
clean means
simple.
what? That they're
organic,
right out of the earth. So the vegetables are locally grown, hopefully.
As best I can, and you want to know, like Johnny seeds, at least, like Mustard Field Farm uses Johnny seeds.
Right,
that's a good thing.
Right. And so knowing the origin of who's grown the foods, and right down to, like you said,
because a lot of the seeds are GMO seeds now.
That's right.
People don't think of that. They just think, it's a plant. It's coming out of the ground. Well,
right, and that's kind of why I haven't had any corn this year until last week. I finally broke down and said, okay, I'm going to have 2 ears of corn at the local market in New London, and because I don't know where their seeds came from and if they are genetically modified.
Or not.
So I just love corn, so at the end of the season I had 2 ears of corn on the cob, and it tasted delicious, but that's probably all I'm going to do.
I got to tell you a good way to have corn that most people don't know about, macrobiotic people know about, is you buy umabushi paste.
Umabushi, what?
I know. Umabushi
paste, let's go on. Umabushi paste. I'm where are we getting omabushi?
At a health food store.
At a health food store.
You can
so
get it in New
market?
London at the Concord Market in New London.
Okay. How do you spell it?
Umboshi. I think I've got it right.
Umboshi.
Umboshi.
And so maybe a market here in Manchester might
They
have
probably
some.
have it. And you just put it on your corn like you would put butter.
Okay.
It's hard to believe, but it's delicious.
Is
it's
it?
delicious. Everybody I've turned on to
I
loves
might
it.
have to get some and try it.
Try it. Yes, it's a different.
And what is it?
It's a plum.
paste?
You buy it in a paste, but it actually comes as a plum, and it's Japanese. And if I were to travel, say I was to travel where you can be eating anything and have an upset stomach, I would carry umabushi plums with me because that will alkaline and settle things down.
I see.
You know,
So they're dried?
they're dried. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so- yes, so
but the
they're-
paste is a paste,
And it comes
Yeah.
like in a jar?
and it comes in a small square container. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Something new. So for
Umabushi beans.
me,
Paste. Okay, sorry.
all this, the things I've learned to keep my daughter alive and healthy and happy. I mean, her life is in a sense very confined, but she's with her mom. She's at home. She knows she's loved and she knows she's wanted.
Right.
And Bree, in a sense, I don't consider Bree a problem or the problem because she's brought so much into my life. My goodness, I wouldn't know about macrobiotics. I wouldn't know. I mean, I can literally take a brain-injured person and I got her walking. I would have never known how to do that without Bree coming into my life.
Right.
I am healthier
You are.
because of her.
You're eating
Okay.
the same foods, right?
Yes, I know that because that's one thing the mama better eat. If she's cooking the food, she better eat with, And
Because Bree will know the difference if you're
Yeah.
cooking something else.
and if you want to understand what your child is, you don't put them over there like they're different. You
Right.
join them.
Exactly, right.
And
Because Bree doesn't think of herself as different. This is just her life.
well, she knows mama loves her.
Right, that's the important thing.
And it's never been Bree. The hardest challenge during all this time has been the support systems, fighting for support systems.
Right.
Now I never wanted anybody to replace me. I just wanted support.
Right.
It took me, when Bree was 27, I literally had a physical collapse, and my caseworker then, Jean Howe from Health and Human Services, who I wish was still my caseworker, that she's been switched off from doing my area or something. She said, Wendy, we have to get you more aid support because the agency I was dealing with that was supposedly I was on a waiting list to get aid support, which I asked them one time, does this list even exist? Because I'm not, nothing's happening.
Anything, yeah.
Every meeting you come here and you ask me if I want to be on the list, and nothing ever happens. And we're talking years. We're not talking from month to month. So at 27, she saw I was having trouble, crying easily, just low-grade
27
depression.
years of
day
daily
in, day out.
caring.
Diapers, feeding.
Right.
And
Yep.
so she called a meeting with Health and Human Services and took us to the top and fought to get the agency to give us aid support. I was in the and she started the process before this happened, but then I collapsed. I was with a mutual friend, Annie Miller, and
Oh, yeah.
we were in a van together with Bree, and I literally had to pull over. I collapsed, and she got me to the New London Hospital, and Dr. Everly at the hospital said the next day, he said, no one does alone what you've been doing. All this time.
Right.
And I took 3 doctors' letters, and it was obvious to everybody, and I was just keep putting one foot in front of the other. So then finally I got aid support after 27 years, but I've been through many years of no support. Me.
This is amazing.
I'm
This is
amazed that I
amazing,
even
Wendy.
lived this, okay?
Wow.
I am almost crying for the woman that did that, basically alone.
Who is you?
It was me,
Yeah.
and
Well,
now,
congratulations, you've been with Bree for all these 34
Yeah.
years, and it's been only you, but you do have some support now from Health
I have
and Human
aid support.
Services.
the interesting thing is, I've always thought, you know, if there is such a thing as standing before God, and who knows, you know, but if there is, even in my worst of days, at least I know I can stand there and answer for my life.
Right, with a clear conscience. Yeah.
I've made mistakes. I've made bad decisions. I am far from perfect. But
we all are.
I kept showing up for my daughter.
Right.
And that I know. Even in my worst of days, I went through 6 years of migraine headaches. It's still caring for Bree. Having a migraine headache where you can't even stand up straight, it hurt so bad.
Wow.
I still had to feed her. I still had to change diapers.
Right. So how did you do that?
I just did it.
Yeah, that's what a mom does.
You just do it.
You just
And
keep
then that passed. That could have been stress, you know, because so many of these things, what is not recognized is PTSD in the caregiver.
Right.
And John Kabat-Zinn in Full Catastrophe Living, his book says, and that caregiving is the biggest turnover and one of the most difficult jobs you can do. But most caregivers do the job and go home at night.
Right, right.
Mine is 24/7.
Right.
No matter what, even if I'm not there and it aids with her, I'm on call, and I have been on call all these years.
So it's been 24/7, 34 years.
Yeah, yeah. And if someone's sick, or not, I'm the one. You know, I'm the backup. That's it, me. You know. So what's been happening lately, which is the challenge, is that the agency, I've been having a stipend that pays for our food. I've been getting it for at least 15 years, and I thought I was grandfather locked in. And I've been told by the agency that now this money comes through that by next spring I have to give up guardianship to someone else, anyone else, to continue receiving this. And I'm not going to give up guardianship, legal right to my daughter.
No.
You know,
Why should you? You're her mother.
I fought school systems because with Bree's allergies and the fact that they cause her seizures, I kept Bree at home. I mean, I've been trained up to teach her reading, to teach her everything by the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. So I took a year when she was at school age, and at the end of the year, after all their studies, the only answer they had for me was Crotchet Mountain. And I remember looking at the lady, there was a table full of people, and I remember saying, that's for me, telling me to put my daughter in Crotchet Mountain would be no different than me telling you to put your 11-year-old in Crotchet Mountain. Because for Bree, for me, my daughter is no different than your daughter, you know. Your 11-year-old should be at home with mom and dad or with the family.
Right.
Just like my daughter should be, you know.
Right.
I had to fight for that, and I remember going to the school board, and I was shaking like a leaf presenting my case, you know, because it's
stressful.
It's stressful. Even coming here today, I was feeling the stressful, you know. But it's time, I think, that I start talking about my life, what I've learned. I mean, I want to be able to continue what I'm doing. I love my daughter. I love looking after my daughter. I love the little lifestyle we have.
You just don't want them to take your food stipend away.
I would like to. I live right now in a one-bedroom walkout basement apartment, and it's comfy and cozy because I make it that way. You know, these agencies love to use Bree and I as their poster family because my house is clean, my daughter's happy and healthy. You know, but then when I ask for services, I've had to fight tooth and nail.
You have.
It's frustrating because in an Oriental and an Asian country, or in traditional societies, what I'm doing.
Traditional meaning indigenous. Cultural.
What I'm doing is considered the honorable and dignified. It's to be able to look after your grandparents is considered. You're lucky to get that. You're considered, it's an honorable thing to do.
And a special needs child is just as honorable.
Of course, of course.
Because they consider them special. They consider them gifted.
When I've been in a society, other than the North American society and an indigenous society, Bree is honored. Bree is respected. She is, when I went to the Sundance.
Right, tell us about that.
Yes, several years ago. I'm a tiny bit Micmac. And I went to a Sundance on the Gaspé Coast, and at the end, one of the warriors asked for the permission to pull. One of the things they do is pull buffalo heads, and they tear them out of their back. It's considered, this is all honorable. They have been through 4 days of fasting and ritual dancing, so they're in another place at that point.
Right.
They asked to do that. At the end of it, Bree was gifted with one of the flags to the entrance because she's considered a gift. She's a special being,
right.
you know, because Bree. Well, the reason she's so special is she forces you to be in the present moment.
Right.
That's what meditation talks about. That's what, you know, all the people who are gurus, it's about being in the present moment.
Be here now, yes.
You know, I always think of my daughter. Some of the greatest teachers usually do not have to say a word.
That's true.
Bree doesn't have to say a word or move a muscle.
Let's go on to that one. The greatest teachers don't have to move a muscle, and Bree doesn't move a muscle. She is a presence. She is a beam of presence, of God's love.
Oh, yeah.
She is just...
She doesn't know a negative thought. She is...
No, she doesn't know a negative thought. And if she hears a negative thing, I know
she doesn't like it.
She'll react to it.
She reacts
right
to
away.
it.
I know when I was helping you out a long time ago.
We call it the ugly face.
The ugly face. She'll give you a real ugly face and let you know with her face and her gestures that don't do that again.
Yeah, no, that's it.
So she's pretty intelligent.
And she just wants you... When I'm working with her, you just be very present, and it's awesome. So, you know, I go, I'm lucky to be allowed to look after her as long as and my goal is that she's happy and healthy, and hopefully one night passes peacefully when it's her time.
Right.
You know, in her sleep. The hardest part of that is our North American society does not honor what I do. Because if they do, I wouldn't be living at poverty level. You know, my car is provided by her dad, which was a divorce agreement. You know, and I just own the furniture in my apartment. So, you know, if this was considered honorable here, I wouldn't be... You know, wondering.
You'd be taken care of.
Yes.
You'd be taken care
yes.
of. And this society that we live in does not, they just don't have any way of wrapping their head around what you're doing. Caring for your handicapped daughter all of your life, this is what you do. This is what
this is my purpose.
This is your purpose. This is what mothers do. They take care of their children. When a child, I mean, you had her in your womb for 9 months, and you birthed her, and you loved her when she came out.
And she came to me for a reason, exactly like she came to me.
Right. She has a reason, and you have a reason for being together, and you're living that reason
and
right
hopefully
now.
maybe is to bring some compassion and understanding to this Western society.
Compassion and understanding to this society. How could that be? How could a handicapped child bring compassion? But of course, because you have to be compassionate, because she's in the present moment. She's here now.
Yes.
And so you are a compassionate, caring person, being her caregiver all of these years.
I personally believe I'm a much better person because of her.
Yes.
I do believe that.
Why do you think that? What do you think? How do you think
she just makes me better. She makes me more grateful. She makes me more insightful. She's helped me be more in the present moment. And, you know, if there's, you know, we come into this planet with a soul, and all we're taking out is a soul, in a sense.
Right, that's true.
And what she's grown in me, in that sense, is the only thing worthwhile. She's grown my soul. She's made me a better soul. So,
which is an amazing thing. So this is your soul's purpose for being here, is taking care of Bree.
And we take care of each other.
Take care of each other.
I do. What she takes care of in me, as far as my soul, all I do is feed her and change her.
And how can you put anything on what she does in that respect?
It's
Keeping you in the
huge.
present
It's
moment.
huge. And
Yeah.
anybody that comes in contact with her, she will bring up anything that's not loving in you to deal with. She doesn't have to talk. It will come up.
Right.
Because if you're going to spend time with her, all of a sudden you're going to have to look at your dark side. You know,
Because she'll point it out to you.
indirectly she'll point it out to you. So, you know, the unfortunate thing is that Viktor Frankl, who was in the concentration camps, Dachau, and he survived them, and his family was all gassed, and he wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. And in that book he talks very clearly how in our Western society we only value the young, and we also only value people on our perception of whether they're useful or not. And so, you know, in our Western society, Bree is not useful, you see. So, so then, of course, you know, she's not valued. But the societies, the tribes that were the strongest, like you could also say, because, you know, I've been told many things. 34 years I've dealt with a lot of rudeness and a lot of insensitivity. You know, it's part of and you can't allow it to crush you. But I recognize that there have been people that told me, well, put her in an institute so she can be with her same kind. And I'm going, I'm her kind.
Yeah, you're her parent. Your
She's
mother.
my blood. We're each other. She came from me. I'm her kind.
Right.
You know, and
so
and
for
you know
to be
what?
supporting her is the best thing for her.
Yes.
You're her blood.
And
You love
spiritually, she is so much more advanced than I will ever be.
her.
as a
What do you
woman.
mean? How do you mean that? What does that mean? Spiritually.
You know, like handicapped. Okay, she's physically handicapped, but she doesn't have a negative thought. I have tons of negative thoughts.
How do you know? How do you know what she's thinking?
It's all these years. It's like
It's
I
a mother's
understand her.
intuition, I guess. Huh?
It's like I understand her better than anybody.
Right.
Like I'll say,
And you can tell if she's having a negative thought by her gestures or her face. Like
yes,
you said, her
and
facial
you know what?
expression.
For the last 4 years of his life, I worked just on the phone with a man named Marcel Vogel, who was a senior scientist for IBM. He did all their crystal work in their computers.
Okay.
And it was, long story short, it was through my mom reading an article telling me, why don't you contact this man? And I'm go, what do I want with crystals? You know, and long story, I phoned his lab. Somehow I can't remember how I got the number. And it was, his secretary was out and he answered the phone. And I told him about my daughter.
That is so amazing, so divinely guided for you.
So many things.
I mean, yeah.
So
how
many
many
things.
times does that happen?
And he said to me, I've given up sugar for Lent. I'll work with your daughter. Call me every Wednesday after I've been to Mass. And he worked with crystals over the phone. I mean, he was this guy, for people in that venue, they know who Marcel Vogel was.
Right.
And
So what did he do with crystals over the phone?
he used to hold it. He said they'd get so hot that he could barely hold them working with Bree over the phone.
So what was he taking energy from her through the crystal?
Or giving energy
or
to
giving
her.
energy to her? You don't know.
I am so naive on this. You know, all I know is that for 4 years, he became like my surrogate dad.
Wow.
I called him Papa Vogel because I never met him. Actually, I had planned to meet him a couple of months, and he had a heart attack. And literally, the last phone call I had him, he was indirectly telling me, he said, I've done everything I've come here to do. He told me he had been out for a walk and had a bit of a, not a heart attack, but a little,
He felt something.
I didn't realize at the time he was telling me that was our last conversation.
Oh, wow.
I only knew the week after when I called and his son said he'd passed.
Oh, wow.
So hopefully this is one of our guardian angels.
Yes. Marcel Vogel. And he gave you a crystal that you wear.
Yes. I've worn this for since 1991,
Wow. And
24/7.
Vogel crystals are very in demand because
Are
of
they?
They're a triangle.
Well, also when he died, his wife sent me one of his teddy bears from his teddy bear collection that I still have.
Oh, cool.
And I still have the note that she wrote on it, and he wrote on it. And she sent me, it's at home, one of his healing crystals.
Wow.
Yes. So
maybe that's the one he was working on with Bree with, maybe.
I have no idea.
No.
You know, I don't know how we got off onto this conversation, but
Well, something that you brought up Marcel Vogel because he
something
helped
came
helped
up.
Bree.
Oh, about Bree, does she have? He was the first one to say to me, Bree does not have a negative thought.
Oh, I see.
That's the end of that. That's where it came
okay.
from.
It came from Marcel Vogel. And
He was the first one to bring that to me and say she doesn't have a negative thought.
Mm.
So
amazing that he would know that from
and
far away.
you know, it through 34 years, there's so much we'll never cover here. I mean,
well, we're getting ready to wrap it up.
yes. So what I would wrap up with is that I struggle with these agencies that I depend on
right.
for stipend, for aid support.
Mm-hmm.
And
for a little bit of respite. I mean, you've been doing this for 34 years, 24/7.
I
was
was
respite is important. Plus, I mean, and the
yes.
the food
About
is
3 years ago, I went away for a weekend, and her dad stayed with her because I asked him. I had just been through breaking an arm, having a fire in my apartment, and a member of my family dying, and I hadn't been away overnight without her before that for 20 years, over 20 years. I mean, we're not talking 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. We're talking decades here.
Yeah.
And all I'm asking is that I shouldn't have to fight to do what I do well, which is I do it really, really.
And you do it better than any agency could do.
Yes. So just continue the stipend. I'm not living.
You're just about living.
Hey, I'm living in a one-bedroom apartment with the stipend. What do they expect me to do without it?
Right. They'll put you
Live
on the
in my
street.
car?
Right.
You know? So I'm not asking for, I'm just asking for what we have to continue without the wondering. You know, I will get a letter from an agency or Health and Human Services, and I actually start to get nervous because I don't know what's coming next. That's what it feels like. And as a caregiver for so long, I definitely have post-traumatic stress syndrome. Caregivers have it. You know, I will have an ambulance pass me, and what goes through my mind is traveling in the ambulance when Bree was 5, and she was having a grand mal seizure, and she was in respiratory distress. And after that one, that's why the next time she had one, which was, I think, the last one, which I brought her out of on my own, because are they going to give her so many drugs that they gave her too much for her body, and they put her in respiratory distress. I still am uncomfortable when I hear an ambulance all these years later.
Right, and anyone that's has a child that has had to be traveling in an ambulance or been in intensive care, had anything happen to them when they were really small or any age, I'm sure that they have a little PTSD from and a similar reaction.
I mean, Bree will get a cold, and even though I know how to step in and deal with it, I go, is this it? I mean, literally, I'm in panic, you know, but I'm learning, you know, the thing with Bree is now I'm learning how to deal with PTSD in a healthy way without drugs or medication.
Right, and that's the goal, and you've done that so well for Bree and for yourself, because I don't believe you're not on any medications either.
No.
You're both living this amazingly clean, healthy lifestyle, and you're her primary caregiver, and that's the best alternative to anything.
And what I've learned
living the way you're living
now is that I now have to. Bree is fine, you know, she's my priority, but now I tend to caregiving. You tend to be a caregiver
to others. Yes.
Yes. So I have to draw back, and it has to be Bree, and now I have to. I wasn't brought up to just do that because that was considered selfish, but now I have to get up in the morning and I have to meditate, you know, and I follow a tape from Harvard Medical School, from Benson's lab, and then I have to.
So you do have a lot of self-care.
I have to do self-care. I've been forced to really do self-care. I have to do yoga now. I have to do weights at the gym because I'm lifting 60 pounds.
Right. Your daughter is 60 pounds.
Bree's 60 pounds. So
wow, she's only 60 pounds?
I know. She's very long and slim. Yes. Thank God she's only 60 pounds.
Thank God. I know. With 60 pounds, that's heavy.
Yes. And I'm not getting any younger.
50.
So,
right.
you know, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be doing this. So now I have to make sure, because no one replaces me. You know, I don't have anybody saying, hey, I'm going to do what you're doing. That's the one thing about my life. There's nobody. No one's volunteering to.
No one's volunteering to step in. Well, a little gong on that. Take a breath.
So.
Wow, Wendy, you've had an amazing life, and you continue this taking care of your daughter, Bree, with wolf-hirschhorn.
Or 4P minus.
Or 4P minus syndrome, which is a missing part of a chromosome.
The fourth chromosome.
The fourth chromosome, one of the things is missing, and she's an amazing being to be in your life. Really amazing that you've done all this, and you continue to do all this, and that you have created a home for her that is perfect and the best that she can have, and that our goal, or my hope is, and your hope is, that you continue to be able to do this, that you continue to have the support. And it's minor support. I mean, if they had put her into...
I am statistically the cheapest solution.
You are the cheapest solution. I mean, if she was in...
I've even had government people, tell me that. You are this... That's having the relatives do this, of any kind, elderly or whatever.
Well, yes, right. Is the best solution for taking care of another human being.
Keeping someone at home is always the best solution.
Keeping someone at home is always the best solution. And so taking her to... the place in Temple, what's that called? Temple, New Hampshire.
Oh, you mean Crotchet Mountain?
It would cost $100,000 a year.
Or more. I think it's 140.
And so it's nowhere near what you're doing.
And to replace me, the shifts of people you would have to have. Mm-hmm. You know.
Well, thanks for being with us today, Wendy. This has just been marvelous. I'm so grateful to understand and know more about all of you've been through, and thank you for joining us. And until next time, next week on the show, I will have Amethyst Wildfire. If you're a fan of hers, hopefully you'll tune in next Thursday, or actually Saturday, Monday, or Tuesday. We're showing the show again. And so until then, remember, your heart knows the way.